Welcome to this week's installment of Today and Tomorrow in Scottsdale with Don Henniger. I'm Don, and joining me, as always, is a man with rhythm.
I do have rhythm.
Now that you got rhythm. You're a drummer.
You got it. You got it.
I know
I'm
you
a
got
drummer.
Rhythm. I know. You got rhythm in many different ways.
I've been playing.
Speaking of rhythm, we've got a great guest today, and he brings music to the ears of everyone in Scottsdale and beyond. And that would be Allan Naplan. He's CEO and Executive Producing Director for Arizona Musicfest. Welcome, Allan.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Great to have you on for sure. Allan joined Arizona Musicfest in 2013. Since his arrival, the organization has seen a lot of growth and a lot of success. And what a career, Allan. My gosh. You began as an opera singer, and I can hear that in your voice, before you moved into arts management in 1999. Since then, he's enjoyed a varied career as an accomplished opera administrator, music educator, cantorial soloist, and composer. And as an opera administrator, he held key positions with the Houston, Pittsburgh, Madison, and Minnesota operas. Wow, what a background, Allan.
Thank you. It's been a fun ride.
No kidding. So tell us some more about you. We'll get into the Arizona Musicfest in just a second, but tell us about you, where you grew up, and how you got into opera, and how you ended up where you are today.
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me. I grew up outside of Boston. And I grew up in a family where my mother was a music educator. So early on, classical music was made to be accessible to me. We were going to the Boston Symphony Orchestra and Opera Company of Boston. And Boston certainly has really outstanding arts organizations. So I was seeing a very high level. And so classical arts, and I was exposed to everything really at that time. And very early on, I knew I sort of got that little ignition thinking, I'm going to do something with this. Initially, I had dreams to be a performer, and I was able to live out those dreams quite successfully for about 7 years, and then realized that the life of packing your bags and living out of hotels for a month here and a month there was not really the lifestyle that I wanted. And in the fact that I could only make maybe an impact that night as I'm performing was short-lived. And I felt as though I wanted to make a deeper impact, a longer lasting impact. That's when I started looking at more arts administration, where I could live in a community and really embrace the community and bring arts to many.
I'm curious about your career as an opera singer. 7 years you were an opera singer?
Yeah.
What was that like? Talk a little bit about what life is like as an opera singer.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of fun when you're young, when you when you don't have as many commitments. It was a thrilling early career. It was solely based in America. I never performed in Europe or elsewhere. Thankfully, I had enough work in America. There are many that have to scramble and go elsewhere. I was very fortunate to have what we call a regional opera career. So from Santa Fe and Nashville and Tulsa and Boston, I was all around the country. And very fortunately for me as well, I never really had to, pick up. I wasn't a waiter in a restaurant while I was desperately trying or hoping. I was successful, which was important for me to learn this was not the lifestyle I wanted. I loved being on stage, but you have no job security. You're an independent contractor. You're just one audition to the next, trying to get your next job. And that was not the stability that I wanted. And as much as I loved performing, I saw a bigger picture as to what I needed for my own satisfaction professionally. And I knew that I'd always be able to make music, whether as a composer, as you mentioned, or singing, which I still get to do quite a bit. But it was meaningful to me to have sort of the administrative job to settle down.
So what was your favorite opera as a performer? I'm sure you did all the Puccini operas.
So I'm a sucker for Puccini, as many are. The great love songs, the great sort of passionate songs of Puccini. I sang some Puccini. I sang in Turandot. I sang in La Bohème, two of his greatest hits. I would say the role I got to sing the most was Papageno in the Magic Flute by Mozart. Okay. I love that. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So it was, somewhat of a varied career, but...
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear him sing in the shower right now. That would be a performance to go see,
might,
right?
My kids don't. So come on over.
So you're still doing composing work too, right? What's that? What's going on with that?
Yeah, the composing was really, I'm so again, fortunate with what has happened with that. It was just sort of a side thing that I started doing, largely because one of my degrees is also in music education. Excuse me. And through music education, there was always a focus on multicultural music and using music to teach about different cultures. And I'm Jewish, and I found a way that I could introduce not just a token Hanukkah song every December, but to actually create music that had integrity that could be used at all times during the year. And so I found this really underutilized niche or so. And from early on, I was a junior in college and had my first 2 pieces published by Boozy and Hawkes, which is one of the greatest classical music publishing houses of the world. And it just launched. And I've been very, very fortunate to have multiple pieces performed at the White House and the Kennedy Center and Carnegie Hall.
Kidding.
And one was up in space on Space Shuttle Columbia, STS-107. It's my piece called An American Anthem. And it was chosen by the commander of the space shuttle to wake up the astronauts on their first morning in space. And sadly, that's the space shuttle that, upon re-entry, blew up.
Yeah.
But I was there at the launch as a VIP, which was an amazing experience. Yeah.
This is why we do these podcasts.
Exactly. These little hidden stories come out all the time.
People in our community that have amazing backgrounds that you never would have known about.
Yeah.
Totally amazing.
So I guess I'm always the one that asks the level set question because, I just discovered what Arizona Musicfest is, and a lot of our audience probably doesn't know. We've been there talking to Allan here for a few minutes now. He's giving us a background because it seems like it's a pretty diverse program.
Sure.
Tell us, baseline, what is Arizona Musicfest?
So first, we're about a 33-year-old organization. So even though you're just learning about us, and that is true of, unfortunately many in the community, there is a long history and a lot of people that have been deeply invested in Musicfest for 3 decades. It started in high North Scottsdale, Carefree, Cave Creek. 33 years ago, there were not paved roads, so it was a lot of difficulty if you wanted to drive downtown Scottsdale or certainly downtown Phoenix, so they brought music to North Scottsdale. It started in a small way, mostly with classical chamber music. It would start growing and growing and growing. I arrived now 11 years ago and saw so much more potential than the organization was doing at the time, largely because of the quality of residents, not only of North Scottsdale, but throughout the valley. And I thought if we really started elevating the artistic excellence, bringing in more celebrity artists, really investing in the artists, that the return on the investment was going to be very fruitful. And sure enough, it has been. 11 years ago when I arrived, the budget was about $900,000. Now we're $4.5 million. When I arrived, there were, I guess, 17,000. No, I have the number somewhere. A much smaller attendance. Now we're up to 40,000 attendees. Right. And it really has been a very strategic, meaningful evolution of the organization to give the community what they are interested in. So we're very attentive to certainly what they're buying, but also talking to them and really learning what's important to them to ensure, as a nonprofit, we are there to serve our stakeholders. It's not my agenda. It's the agenda of what we are serving in this community. And it is clear that we have, resonated and that we are deeply connecting with our constituents. That's both on the concert series, then in more of our charitable work, what we do with young musicians, which is really exciting and outstanding. And then our program called Music Alive, which is our lifelong learning and creative aging program. And I can keep on talking.
No, that's good. Yeah. No.
Hopefully we can get to that a bit.
No, we definitely will. One more question on your growth. You're on your trajectory right now is, like a hockey stick.
Yeah.
How much further can you go like that?
Oh, I think we have a lot of room to keep on growing. Largely, if you only look, which it would be limiting, but if you only look at North Scottsdale, for good or bad, it's a rather homogenous neighborhood. So we know that in one house, if they're a Musicfest patron, chances are 2 doors down, there's going to be a pretty similar demographic of age, of general financial capacity, and general interest in music. So it's just a matter of breaking through and making sure that everyone knows. And as great as our ascension has been, I always say that I think we're still just scratching the surface of what our potential is.
Pretty amazing. We talked before about I'm curious about how you book all these acts. Because you're going to have, 35 concerts this season?
Yeah, it's good. It just became closer to 40 because we've
40?
added some.
Did you?
Yeah.
So take us behind the curtain. How do you plan a season? What are the logistics be getting all that together, booking everybody? What's that look like?
Some of it is becomes somewhat formulaic. I have tracks that I want to program. Certainly, we have a very strong commitment to classical music. It's in our DNA, how we started. Uniquely, we have what's called the Festival Orchestra, which has members of the New York Philharmonic and the Chicago Symphony and the LA Phil, the elite orchestras of America. We have representation that comes to Scottsdale for 1 week to perform with elite soloists as well, like Renee Fleming this year. So classical is a track of ours. And nostalgia is really important to us, to be doing artists that resonate with, our demographic, our core demographic, which is certainly 65 and 70-year-olds plus. So this past weekend, Frankie Avalon, we have Paul Anka coming. That's really special when we can celebrate artists like that. Jazz, Broadway, major Broadway stars now make Musicfest a destination. Classic rock, sort of in that nostalgia realm as well. And then we'll take departures into bluegrass occasionally, or world music, Ladysmith Black Mambazo this year. So there are tracks, but then I can also get excited by hearing that a certain artist is traveling, and we want to grab them and make sure that they have a stage at Musicfest.
It's got to be. We talked before we went on the air a little bit about the competitive nature of this. So talk a little bit about how you maneuver through that.
Yeah, so the Scottsdale Valley market is one of the most saturated markets for live performance, certainly in the months of January through March, when there's such an influx of snowbirds. So there is, and this is wonderful, there are so many opportunities by certainly the civic auditoriums, the performing arts centers that are owned by municipalities. There's casinos. There's for-profit entities. There is so much going on. So it really is sort of a navigating through having relationships with agents to ensure that they know the good work that we do and the facilities that we have, so that they come to us. It's not constantly that we're having to scramble to find someone, but they know if they're passing from Texas to California, stop off at Arizona Musicfest, because it's going to be a really strong quality production that they're going to get. But, we always know if one of our colleagues gets an artist this year, we can get him next year. Yep. And there's enough audience in the Valley that we can all sort of play nice and ensure that we all get the artists we want.
That's fantastic. So what are some of your favorite concerts coming up this season?
Well, I'm thrilled to have Renee Fleming. I got my start in opera, and Renee, there is not an American singer higher in prestige and in her career accomplishments than Renee Fleming. So this is really a feather in our cap at Arizona Musicfest that she is interested in coming to us. So that's wonderful. Kristen Chenoweth at the top of not only Broadway, but certainly movies, TVs. She is, an absolute star.
Right.
So that's really special to have her at Musicfest. We look forward to bringing back Paul Anka, who at, 83 or so, or 81 when he was with us last time, just wowed the audience. He is just in great form. So we're thrilled to bring him back. Another Broadway artist, Brian Stokes Mitchell, is coming. He was here maybe 5 years ago. A wonderful, wonderful artist. So we're looking forward to that. A special evening with Rita Moreno, where it'll be a retrospective of her career, looking through multimedia and discussion about a legendary EGOT, the Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony.
Right, of course.
You don't have many of those.
No.
And we're going to have one of them at Musicfest. So there are so many really special things. We have some anniversaries that we're celebrating this year as well.
We got to hear about the World Doctors Orchestra and what a unique story that is. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so they came to us. This is 85 physician musicians from around the world. There is, not surprisingly, I'll call it a DNA that a lot of doctors started as musicians. In fact, through our Young Musicians program, where we are helping to cultivate future, stars of music, some of them that choose not to go into music decide to go into the sciences, and we find out that they're going to med school. Not surprising at all. So these are, really accomplished doctors who are still really accomplished musicians from all around the world. And 4 times a year, they go to some destination around the world and perform as the World Doctors Orchestra. So we are very pleased to be hosting them in a concert in, what's the date? April 5th. And what's important as well is proceeds from the concert will go to support the Virginia G. Piper Medical Clinic. They will do a special program on the intersection of music and health through our Music Alive series. So we're really maximizing their presence in our neighborhood. So we're looking forward to that. Yeah.
Well, what a unique opportunity that is.
You better buy your tickets right now, Kevin.
I know. I got to get that.
Don't wait. Don't do what I do. All of a sudden it's sold out. You're done.
I got to lock in my Renee Fleming first. But
you better do that tonight, man.
Have you met Renee Fleming?
I have, actually.
I bet.
I not only have I met her when I worked at Houston Grand Opera, maybe this is speaking out of turn, I actually issued one of her contracts.
Really?
And it was sort of a historic contract because she was going to be doing Violetta in La Traviata for the very first time.
Oh.
And we were doing it before she did it at the Metropolitan Opera. So that was a big deal. And I was there typing back then on a typewriter the contract. And that was exciting.
Did she have any weird riders like green jelly beans or anything like that?
I don't recall that she did. They're true. I mean, we do get those riders.
Of course. Yeah. So you mentioned before a little bit. So talk a little bit about your education and youth programs.
Yeah, this is very special to us. This is our charitable investment in the community. So to speak of the young musicians, we are very fortunate in the Valley to have outstanding young classical musicians, and that's the focus of this. So we have 6 competitions. In fact, one of them's coming up this coming weekend, a piano competition. We have string competitions, woodwind, brass, chamber ensembles, a vocal competition. And it's not just for students from the Valley, because in fact, we've become a major destination for young musicians of the state. The elite young musicians come to Musicfest for this competition. So we are providing them with certainly financial reward if they win, but really important adjudication. And through that, we are identifying the best of the best, who then we will present in concert 3 times at the MIM. We also, through this, identify students that we will provide through our program access to artistry, master classes. So when we have these distinguished artists coming to our season, if we can, we will connect them so they can either get a private lesson or a master class or talk about what it's like to be a professional musician. But this is a unique opportunity. We have wonderful teachers in the Valley, but if you can get, a star to be informing your growth, that's really important as well. So that's a lot of what we do with young musicians. Then our lifelong learning and creative aging series called Music Alive. Last year, we did over 160 events and had over 4,000 attendees to Music Alive. So this is everything from music making. So you can learn how to play ukulele. You can be in a group called Piano Fusion. You can do hand drumming and West African drumming to get in touch with your inner beat. It's called health rhythms. And it's certainly proven that for heart health and for cognitive sharpness, staying in touch with music as your mind gets older, as your body gets older, is really important. And then we have a lecture series. We recently did one about, it's actually a 4-part series about the Beatles, because we're celebrating their 60th anniversary of arrival in America this year.
Right.
The wonderful Valley jazz pianist Nicole Pesci is a resident artist with us. So she has a series called Celebrating the Great American Songbook. And at our facility, and it goes on and on, musical theater and discussion groups, but at our facility on East Thompson Peak Parkway, we have 2 rooms within our building. One can seat 140, typically one between 120 and 140 people, and the other is about 60 people. So we open up our doors wide to ensure that during the day, people can freely come into Musicfest and make music, discuss music, learn about music, engage. And it's not just about that, it's about the social interaction and finding people that have similar interests as you may have, and really creating this community. And ultimately, as a nonprofit organization, we also want them to get deeply invested in us so that we're really influencing their quality of life and that it's part of their lifestyle, not just going to evening concerts, but that throughout the day they can be engaged with music.
It's an amazing number of events and things that you're doing. And I knew a little bit about Arizona Musicfest, not to the degree you're going. Kevin, a lot of people don't know about this. So how do you populate all of these events and programs? You must have wonderful collaborations with groups across the valley that bring people, bring students, and sort of sly marketing, below just to the key constituents. How does that all look?
Yeah, certainly we have a very concentrated marketing plan for North Scottsdale. And while we don't intend to stay exclusive to North Scottsdale, the reality is when you only have 60 seats in a room or 140, or our venue, which is significant in the city of Scottsdale, 1,600, but we easily fill those 1,600 on a regular basis just with constituents of North Scottsdale. Really? So in some ways, we don't have to market beyond where we are right now as an organization. We have limitations because we don't own our own facility. So when we rent our venue, we have to stop at a number of concerts. If we were so lucky to continue to grow, then of course we would do a lot more marketing because we'd have more capacity to fill. But as we are right now, we are regularly maximizing our spaces. It's a very efficient, way. We have a very high rate of people that are buying 10, 15 concerts of our concert series, which is huge. That's a huge amount. And we're so fortunate that that is the case. So once all of our donors and our regular buyers buy up, in July, there is not that many seats left, which is a good problem to have. Right. Although we'd like more and more people to learn about Musicfest.
But I also wonder, with all the other educational and youth programs that you're doing that you don't really have to market for, you must have, word is out that if you want to be involved with youth music or education or whatever, that you guys have a wonderful lineup for people to consider.
Yeah, we're deeply connected with the elite teachers of young musicians, the studio teachers, whether they're professors at ASU or private studios. They know that when the competitions are announced, this is where they want their students to go. Or, if we're going to have a major artist, classical or Broadway, doing a master class, they want to be a part of Musicfest so that they get that opportunity when it comes to their attention.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Aspirations moving ahead. Someday is there a new venue perhaps that you might be able to build?
That's certainly an aspiration. Yeah. The way the trajectory and the momentum that we have, and I just addressed this to some extent. We're hitting a ceiling because I do believe we're just scratching the surface. And there's no reason that we need to be exclusive to North Scottsdale, and we're not now. We get patrons from throughout the valley. But certainly where there's tremendous growth in North Scottsdale, that's where a lot more housing is being built. And while people, may not appreciate that it's ruining the desert or taking up, I see it as a patron every time another,
Of course you do.
There's a lot of opportunities. So yeah, we certainly want to, continue a conversation that is happening right now as far as could there be a venue in the future, maybe not exclusive to Musicfest, but in fact for the city of Scottsdale, because when Scottsdale Center was built many, many years ago, that was the population center of the city. And now we are so much taller going into North Scottsdale. And the reality is, if you live at the top of Desert Mountain, that's a long drive to come down to, Old Town Scottsdale.
Yeah.
Or downtown Phoenix, right?
Even longer drive, indeed. Yeah.
Hey, I want to ask you something real quick because you talked about it briefly, but this is what really drew me into Arizona Musicfest and gave me the introduction, and I was blown away. Let's talk about the festival orchestra. Mm-hmm. So this is... You mentioned that they came from musicians coming from other orchestras here. These are professionals from the major symphonies and orchestras around the country. Why don't you call the All-Star Orchestra? Yeah. Right?
We do.
That's what they are.
Do reference it. That's right.
This is really an orchestra comprised of the best players from all the best orchestras that come to Scottsdale to give a performance. How many concerts do they do a year?
So this year they'll do 4. There have been past years where we've done 5 or 6, but this year it's 4. Yeah, amazing.
And you played some Shostakovich, I believe, last year.
Sure,
which blew me away because that's meaty music. As somebody who knows classical music a little bit, that's choppy stuff. Yeah. That's not just like playing Cinderella. So congratulations. I was happy to see that, and so that's what really lit my fire. So what's it like to do that?
So first of all, it's not hard to attract someone from Chicago Symphony to come to Scottsdale in February, March. So we have that to our advantage.
Okay,
But that's not enough. They need to know that they're going to be playing in a similarly elite ensemble because they're not just coming to play around. So we have now, I mean, basically it's 30 years of a history of being this serious, classically focused organization. Our festival orchestra is run by Robert Moody, who for a time was with the Phoenix Symphony, then he left town, but our organization retained him to come back every year for the festival orchestra. So we have a wonderful family of musicians that even if our players from the New York Philharmonic are not available that week, we can call our players from the Boston Symphony Orchestra or the Philadelphia or Cleveland, and the word gets out that this is a really important orchestra. The truth is, in the summertime, there are other ensembles like this, these festival orchestras. Yeah. We are highly unique being a winter ensemble that would do this, which causes some complications because most orchestras are off in the summer, so you have all this time. Right. So that does create a bit of a scheduling. But again, if we can't get players from the ABC orchestra, we're getting them from the next equally high ensemble. So the level of artistry just continues to grow, and more people from elite orchestras here. There's a great gig in Scottsdale, Arizona in late February, early March. Get your name on the list because you want to be there.
And let's talk real quick about Maestro Moody. This guy went to Eastman. This is serious. This is a serious musician right here. Yeah. That's the cream of the crop right there. You must be thrilled to have him.
Oh, Bob's terrific. Has a great rapport with these musicians. In 1 week we have to do 4 different programs, so that requires a real special connection between the musicians. Respecting the maestro and the maestro being able to quickly work with these musicians. Bob frequently calls it's like driving a Ferrari because you have this high level orchestra. So it's a very special relationship that he has with these musicians, and certainly has with our audience as well. And many remember him from his days with the Phoenix Symphony. Sure. So that's always a nice thing where they can, welcome Bob back as well.
It's fantastic. Yeah. So are there other organizations in other cities that kind of replicate or kind of similar to what you do? What's that look like across the country?
I'd say we are very unique in that many that would have the same business model as we, as far as the presenting and our youth programs, would be the Civic Performing Arts Center. It would be, the full investment would be for this organization. City of Scottsdale is very unique in that there is Scottsdale Arts, but then there's this thing called Arizona Musicfest, which is producing massive, major, concerts and producing all of these young musicians and all of this charitable work as well. So there's not really a model for who we are, being solely a nonprofit that is 99% reliant on individual donors to keep us afloat. But thankfully, we are so fortunate to have very generous individual donors, and ticket sales account for a huge percentage of our revenue as well. So I frequently actually look more to those summer festivals that have a bit more of that that business model similar to us.
So you're running a business. It's a nonprofit, but it's still a business. You got a board and all that. And we've talked a lot about successes here. What are some of the challenges that you're facing going forward?
Well, we did speak about the venue. That is a challenge because as quickly as we want to grow, we just don't have that control in our own hands. We have challenges where a manager may say, I'm hearing great things about Arizona Musicfest. We want to book our artist there, but we don't. A year out, we can't say, "Great, we're going to sign you up for that date," because we're reliant on our venue, wonderful venue, our main venue, Highlands Church in North Scottsdale. Different performing arts centers would be in complete control from day one. It's their hall. Right. We have to be respectful of their First Highlands Church. They take care of their own, appropriately. So there are elements of our business model that are not able to flourish with the same speed and success as comparable organizations that would be doing the same business, just because we don't have our own space. So that is a challenge that we continue to grow and move, and we certainly have no lack of major artists that we make it work. So I'd say that that's something that we continue to look at as to what is our future going to be with that model.
Maybe a capital campaign in the future?
It would certainly have to be. Unless one person wants to give it all, yes, a capital campaign would be in our future.
Luckily, in this room, we have somebody who's very experienced at capital campaigns.
Well, who would that be, Kevin?
Don just rolled off 3 in a row.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't take it. Although this would be a fun one. Yeah, this really would be a fun one.
That'd be great. But you could do a great job. Tell us a little bit about the challenges, because I know what it must be like being somebody who's involved in the program, especially classical music, because I'm the guy that wants to hear the orchestra play all the newest, hardest stuff. And I know that's a small market, and I know you have to listen. You said earlier about listening to your constituents. I know a lot of these symphony orchestras are playing the Batman music and Superman music with the film screen behind them and stuff like that. Yeah. I'm not interested in that stuff, but it must be a fine line, right?
Look, the classical performing arts are going through a really hard time right now, whether it's classical symphony or opera or ballet. Certainly coming out of COVID, they are seeing even more difficulty attracting audiences, which is not because of COVID. It's, unfortunately, it is our world has just sort of taken a turn from the classical arts. It's just not part of the culture these days. It's just not respected and appreciated in the way that it used to be. And even more challenging is if you then start stretching the repertoire. If you're not doing the core favorites, it's going to have a lesser audience. But you can't solely just do the core favorites, because that gets pretty boring. And we can't just be a museum of classical music. Right. It continues to evolve, and we need to do that. So it is a bit of a dialogue that I always have with conductor Bob Moody to make sure that we are certainly giving the stuff that people just love and want to come, but then we can challenge them a bit. The beauty of an orchestra concert is typically there are 3 pieces. So you can have a major symphony that is the heart of the concert, but maybe you open with a more contemporary piece that lasts for 7 minutes or so. It may not be everyone's favorite, but they know that the Beethoven symphony is about to come, so they can appreciate what you're doing. So it's very much a balancing act of repertoire and programming. But every symphony orchestra now is doing all of those pops programming, in essence, to subsidize the core classical. At Musicfest, we put on everything else, all of the rock concerts, classic rock, all that stuff, because every time we announce a classical concert, you're sure to lose money because we have 80 plus people on the stage. And by the way, as we've discussed, they don't live here. Yeah. So we're flying them to town, we're housing them, we're paying them rates that they're getting at major orchestras. But this is our commitment. We feel strongly that it's important for us to be celebrating classical orchestral music. And we can do that because of the revenues we generate from the other concerts and because of the generosity of our philanthropic community.
It's fantastic. It makes the diversity in your lineup, which just fuels everything, man. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, man.
And as you know, we're on the board of Family Promise, which has a unique business model, and you guys have a unique business model as well, kind of, utilizing the generosity of your patrons, right?
Yeah,
we volunteer. What I'm saying, you have a big volunteer.
Oh, we certainly have volunteer. We have over 100 volunteers that are ushering, that are helping with all sorts of elements of the organization. We have a wonderful board of directors, and then our community of donors, which continues to grow in really significant, meaningful ways. And that's just so important, because ticket sales is very transactional, and someone comes to see, an ABBA tribute, but that doesn't inspire them to become generous. Mm-hmm. We need that person that gets the mission of Musicfest, that understands that beyond the lights and the loud music and, whatever it is, that we are investing in the community with young musicians and helping their future and providing opportunities for seniors to engage in music. That's taking the next step from just being a patron to becoming a donor. And that has been an evolution that we've been very successful at creating. And fortunately, it allows us to continue to grow.
Kevin, this is a jewel for our community.
Absolutely. And like I was telling Allan before, I'm a little embarrassed that being a classical music fan, I'm just now coming onto my radar, but that's okay. It is what it is. I know what it is now, and I'm going to do my best to help support the organization moving forward.
You're in. Now that you know it, and hopefully a lot of other people will pick up on this and hear what you're all about. And I think the fact that you're a community partner, not just a concert venue, you're a community partner doing good things for our community is amazing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. What a great story.
Except for, I don't know about Renee Fleming coming. You may have to get us some extra security detail around me. I'm a huge fanboy.
Yeah, well, I know where you're going to be that night. That's for sure. Hey, Allan, thank you so much for visiting with us today. And thank you so much for all the work you're doing and making Arizona Music Fest such a big part of our city's music and entertainment scene. And but we look forward to seeing you. I'll tell you what, Kevin, when you want to go to a concert, they sell out quick. So,
they do.
So you better go fast, man.
Yep.
I know that from personal experience. But anyway, fantastic job. And we'll look forward to maybe to getting you on sometime in the future once you launch that capital campaign and build a new venue, right?
Wonderful.
And thanks to all of you for listening today. We look forward to being with you back again for our next edition of Today and Tomorrow in Scottsdale.